All right, welcome everyone to the third edition of the 2027 Remix. The topic for today is spirituality and how spirituality will shift from how we currently relate with it and understand it and are being conditioned by the cross of planning to what we might expect in the cross of the sleeping phoenix. So, spirituality is a big term, right? It's a loaded term like God. And, it might be helpful to kind of just wrap our minds around what exactly do we mean by spiritual? And there's obviously a lot of different answers to that question. A couple things that Teresa and I considered was that spirituality is about is often about broadening your awareness, right? Engaging in practices that can help you become more self-aware, right? To relate with self and other with more awareness, right? Um, it's about more deeply engaging with your experience, right? Tuning in more, you might say, than checking out. And again, there's so many different spiritual orientations, but that's one particular flavor. And by the way, please, we welcome your encouragement, in the chat. You're welcome to raise your hand. We'd love to hear your ideas about, how spirituality is going to be changing. Um, it has I think more so from a seven-centered context, often about reaching for our highest potential. And the reason why I say seven-centered, because that can often be, I mean, certainly there are healthier versions of ourself, right? More balanced, more integrated, but there can often be a bit of a judgment that gets slipped into the sense of what's higher, right? And so the Saturnian path that really defined us as seven-centered beings was all about striving. Saturn's more militant, it's constraining. It's like a sergeant, like a drill instructor, and it's going to whack you when you get out of line, right? And so, it's the notion of the spiritual path where you're climbing up the mountain, a steep, narrow path, right? And that type of orientation of spirituality, I think, is radically changing. So that's one aspect of it. We could also simply say spirituality is what are the values that we celebrate, that we think are healthy, that we think are empowering, that, we think are enriching our lives, right? So these sorts of things. Teresa, do you want to share?
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
also see spirituality as a container for the unexplainable. I'm an
Mm,
1156. I'm a design of a seeker. And so
yeah.
I'm always seeking for the thing to understand the things that we can't explain. And it's almost like what we can't explain scientifically, we look to hand to something we can have faith in, like for some that's God, source, or even just the cosmos. um, Under cross of planning, I feel like there is conditioning around it being a moral framework that
Mm,
is disguised as devotion to something. And it's also a tribal identity system. So it's a way to feel that sense of belonging.
yeah. Yeah, and often, through the tribal conditioning, we currently have been in this era of having a transactional relationship with God.
Mhm.
It's always funny, right? Like I remember growing up and thinking like, how come every professional athlete thinks that God is on their side? Like, that was such a common refrain, or like you negotiate with God, you're like, if you help me get through this, if you
Mhm.
help me get what I want, I promise I will become a different person,
Mm.
and it's not a promise you can make, right? But they're being conditioned to think about these kind of commitments and promises in relationship to God, source, whatever, because of the 3740.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Even with celebrities and people when they're accepting awards, like, oh, I wouldn't be here without God. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, no, you're there because of yourself and the hard work that you put in. And yeah, luck and chance and trajectory and the
Yeah.
unexplainable, right? Some things we just can't explain.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to give credit to something that is,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
And And look, I don't think it's illegitimate to have an awareness of a larger being, larger intelligence, or whatever. But to think that that being is on your side, uniquely rooting
Yeah.
for you,
Yeah.
is the incredible arrogance. And again, arrogance is baked into the cross of planning because of the ego that's there,
Hmm.
right? We all have distorted ideas about self-worth, about what we think we need to do to get self-worth. We think that self-worth
Mm.
is a transaction. I need to provide something for my tribe. I need to be loyal. I need to be skillful. I need to be good in some way, shape, or form. I need to fit in here. Then I'm worthy, right?
Yeah.
So we
Like
put worthiness was like conditional, you know?
good things happen to me because God loves me as
Right.
opposed to somebody else. Like, why does God love you and reward
Right.
you? I remember being a little kid and I grew up going to Catholic church and just wondering, having those questions of why is that
Yeah.
person rich and they're thanking God and what did they do to deserve that or why did God give them all of that, but then this person is suffering. It just never made sense to me.
Yeah.
Like if it
Yeah.
worked the way that the church said it worked, basically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so there's mystical revelations, right? Which is happening through different channels in the chart. And then religion is the codification of the mystical revelation, for belonging, to determine who's in, who's out, for certain types of controls and influence and power and all these things, right? And it's amazing how I think it's so obvious the
Hmm.
binary nature of life, but I didn't really notice it fully until human design. But
Yeah.
it's like, you know, the things that purport to do good are often doing the most harm, you know, you know,
Yeah.
and some of the most corrupt and dangerous individuals obviously position themselves uh, as righteous,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah. I remember there was this trend a couple months ago, or at least it was going around on TikTok. This woman was just doing an experiment and calling up churches to see who would give her formula. If she said, "Hey, I have a 4 month
Mm,
old baby and I've run out of money and I don't have anything to feed them, would you be able to buy me a can of formula?"
mm,
And the ones that said no, majority of the time were these like super Christian, like the
yeah,
Christian nationalist type churches that claim to be all high and mighty. And then this humble little church over here, or like a mosque or something, we're like, yes, like let us help you, and
mm,
it really just showed the performative worshiping of God and the performative
yeah,
aspect of religion. Because it's like, put your money where your mouth is. If this is what you guys say you're here for, and then you're not helping the poor or helping the needy, it's a little baby, you
yeah.
know? It's
I
really
mean,
interesting.
we know that what their mind is preoccupied with, right, is often it's a symptom, it's an indication of what they haven't integrated, of what they're disconnected from, right? So the mind
Mhm.
is over here talking about how good they are, how righteous, they have the right understanding, the right relationship with God, all that stuff, and it's like, where is the disconnect that this is all a compensation for?
Yeah.
Right? Um, and that's Jen Allen just said in the chat. I feel like there is the potential for spirituality to become less performative, like outward and structured, and more personal, inward and flexible.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that makes a lot of sense given that we're moving into this individual age. You already can see it happening. To me, mysticism was always inward and flexible, and we're kind of maybe coming into an era where that can be embraced more, because I think mysticism it's an individual's relationship with source, with God, right? It's not a structured communal, and that's why mystics have such original language and insights around their experience. And then of course it gets hijacked, watered down, and corrupted, for political agenda and all the things.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, it
but
makes you wonder what is the purpose in having a relationship with God if our conditioning says it's so that you get rewarded, right? Or if that's what the
right.
church says. But
Yeah.
it is such a personal thing to have a relationship with God because if you don't see God as this almighty figure that can smite you and punish you or bless you or whatever, and you just see it as kind of a relationship with something bigger or something mysterious even. Or
Mm-hmm.
I know some people call it creator. I'm of the feeling it does feel like something did create us. I don't know what that thing is, but it
Mm-hmm.
did this. I'm not of the thought process that this is all just random and just I don't know. It feels like it was put together on purpose, I guess is what I would say. But
There's an intelligence behind things.
yeah,
Yeah.
intelligence behind it. And that's just such a personal exploration to have, is
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say. And especially if there's no personal benefit materially in the
Yeah.
immediate, to have that relationship with God, what is the purpose of it? That has to be a personal thing, or else there's really no
Mm.
point.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you can think about how many different answers there are to these questions via someone's design, right? And like,
Yeah.
even just from a simple circuitry perspective, you can think that people with abstract circuitry are looking for meaning, and
Yeah.
so that search for meaning is going to eventually extend to the bigger questions, if you're very, I mean, I'm logical and abstract, but if you're very logical like me, you want to understand. I want to I love the Raw quote where he says, "We are a pattern in a pattern looking at the patterns," you
Yeah.
know, and, the more you study human design, the more you see it is all patterns, beautifully interconnected. And there is a certain, like, difficult to explain, but deeply satisfying to you. I'm a generator. Um, Feeling of just having some glimpse into this larger tapestry that we're a part of. Like, I do think it's a human concern, to ask these questions, to wonder, and to try to just get a sense of, like, what am I doing here in all
Yeah. What are
this?
we doing here? What
What am
is
I
this?
what am I doing here?
When you zoom out, like
Uh-huh.
sometimes I have these moments where I just totally zoom out and it's just fucking insane that this
Hmm.
exists, that all of this exists, that we're all doing this thing on this
Yeah.
floating rock in space. So
It's incredible.
I think we should all contemplate that to a degree, to varying
Yeah.
degrees, but
Yeah, and I just
yeah.
think, like, the more because our subjective awareness is deepening and increasing, right? Like, we're all becoming more individual, more differentiated, more in our own reality bubble. That is going to lead to new mystical revelations, new ways to relate with spirit, with reality. And that's interesting. That's exciting. Whereas, religion, for all of its pretense of connecting you with something higher, really puts a ceiling on how far you can wonder,
Mhm.
you know. They really limit it in a lot of ways because we know the tribe is always trepidatious about change. We know that the tribe is trepidatious about not only change, but about the other, right? And there are members of the tribe that are more open to welcoming an individual, right? There are specific gate activations and particular line activations where, like, hey, I realize that we need some new thinking around here. But overall, we know the tribe is very much like, we're going to do the same thing that we know that works for the end till the end of time, you
Mhm.
know?
Mhm.
And we can see that type of mentality throughout the world. It's still very prevalent in the US. It's very anachronistic and kind of strange, and it's really having a big effect on the world stage as these people are often um, they're the most easily manipulated, right? To kind of platform various agendas, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because you can see it's not even just in religion, it's also in kind of the quote unquote new age spiritual circles
Yeah.
where people have rules. Like you can be in with our tribe.
Mm,
It's
mm.
insidious. The cross of planning is insidious and where
Yeah.
even something that seems like it should be really individualized and mystical and open-minded can still end up being like follow these rules. You're in, you're out, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And I just think, like, with human design, the precision of the keynotes is incredible. And just think about the term planning and how our relationship with God and spirituality it was planned. It was like, where are you going to get me? Okay, if I go to church, if I do this, where does it get me? Right? Whereas now we're going to have conditioning to really be much more attuned to the present moment with gate 20, right? We're moving into an existential time, whereas cross planning is looking toward the future, and who are my people? What's the community I belong in? What are the rules around that? And now it's going to be some aspect of what spirituality I think is going to become under the new conditioning is relating to the present moment authentically, right? Creatively, we might say, and we touched on this in, I think, the last remix, but like there's something about like improvisation, just really living on that edge, you know,
Hmm.
and it's a really cool continuity with what the rightness seeks, you know,
Mm.
and rightness is getting more. See, leftness is beaten up now with the um everything that is taxing our dopamine,
Hmm.
and with where what social media and technology, anyone like myself, I have a left mind and left view, but my leftness isn't as left as it used to be. I think we're all getting a little bit more oriented to a world that is more centered in rightness, is more welcoming of rightness. And it's going to be, as I said, a continuity with the gate 20 conditioning was like, just open your mouth and see what comes out and trust, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think even noticing trends on social media and just what does well, I guess, in the collective,
Mm,
I feel like people are able to sense authenticity a lot more. And
yeah.
I know that's such a buzzword right now, but you can tell when somebody just kind of picked up their phone and made a video in the moment and what came out was really cool. And then you can tell
Yeah.
when things are very planned and they're reading a script and it's very strategic and it has an agenda. And I feel like overwhelmingly the frequency of something that somebody just made on the fly, there, and I get that there's a purpose to both videos in terms of business and whatnot, but it's just there's something really cool about it to witness, just somebody being themselves in the moment and not having an agenda and just seeing
Hmm.
what comes out, which is very right centric.
Yeah. It's where we're going. We're moving into a 6 line time. Authenticity is going to be highly sought after. And as we know, everything is a binary. So we can also
Mhm.
expect hypocrisy.
Mhm.
But I think the thing is, I think we are identifying authenticity more easily now because we've just seen so much.
Yes.
We've got the muscle memory now of like, okay, I've seen this movie play out before. This is not entirely trustworthy, you know?
Yeah, where you can even tell when people are doing performative authenticity of like,
Yeah, we talk about that in
I'm gonna,
analyst training a lot,
yeah,
right?
like I'm gonna set up
Six
my
line,
phone
right.
and and get out of bed and
Yeah.
these videos where people are trying to be really relatable and authentic and it feels performative.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a big 6 line trap, right? They have to find true authenticity through their body, not this notion of what that would look like. I don't know how to say your name, San or Sane. Um, I feel like spirituality will be more lived as an awareness of who and what we are as an individual and as spirit and human form. And also that we are all one. Like there will be more awareness in each individual and also more aware to our spiritual needs to be more connected. Maybe also a raise in our consciousness and frequency because we become more aware and spirituality will not have an agenda anymore. I love it. I mean, I think that very well could be the case.
Yeah.
There's a balance, right? Of like, we all are one body of humanity, and yet we are distinct and individual. And humanity, I think the really exciting thing is we've never quite figured out how to come together, how to relate without losing ourselves in that, without groupthink taking over, without, and what I always say is when the tribe has power over you, right? Then, you don't get you're not going to be able to be yourself, right? It's sort of like, if mom and dad are paying the bills, then, you know, your life choices may be compromised, and I think we're moving into an era where, not to say there's not going to be any dependence, because I think we all are on a certain level dependent on each other, right? But I think there's going to be tribes that form around common interest and, what lifts people's spirits, and as I've talked about in prior episodes, and music, I think, is going to be a key because we know Gate 55 is sensitive to that. That's one way that its spirit gets lifted. So, yeah, it's a really interesting thing to think about deeply relating, but also just as much deeply being true to yourself. And like, I think there's an art in that, that a lot of us in this predicament right now are going to be navigating because that wasn't our legacy. That wasn't our conditioning. We did compromise most likely, and now it's like the zeitgeist is shifting towards where, okay, I don't feel bound by the same obligation, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting because it isn't tribal. I think that the future of spirituality isn't tribal, yet I do think it is relational. I think it is relational, and I think it's going to be some different expression of tribalism. I mean, what Ross says is with the 1949 breaking down, the mystical way, which starts in 19, right, goes to 49, goes through 3740, 5125, and then up to 1020, right? It's going to have to route the other way. He's saying it's the channel of transformation, the 5432, that is now going to take on a whole, and it already has some spiritual qualities to it, right? But it's going to take on a new level of depth in that regard. So, that
Mm.
channel is all about helping out each other, raise up the ranks. It's like the 32 says, hey, you've got potential. I can feel your ambition. I think you're going to be helpful, and I'm willing to lend you a hand to pull you up the ranks because I think that's a good investment to make. And so that channel may start to become, as much or more spiritual than about material transformation, potentially. Or it's some interesting balance of a more material way of relating with spirituality, right?
Mm.
May not be
Yeah.
either or, it may be an integration of some sort, more balanced, right? Because right now we can tend to denigrate the material, right? And, you know, look, I'm a 4521, so I'm a materialist and I'm also a mystic. You can be both, you know,
Yeah.
but it's about how do you, I think the thing is we have so much baggage around greed and obsession with money and power and status. But it's like, no, I mean, to simply be at home here on the material plane and to take care of your material concerns is not problematic, you know? So there's something in all that, something in transforming our lives together, right? Celebrating individuality, embracing rightness, embracing, this lack of agenda thing I think is great because it's like we're not going to be able to plan and forecast anyway. you know,
Right.
in this extremely complicated, one of the things about the cross of planning that's funny is like it's not just that planning is going away in some abstract sense. It's like you can already feel it is really hard to plan. Like it's not just like it's being taken away from us. Like the opportunities to plan are that isn't a thing in this incredibly complex, you know, socio-political cultural landscape. you know?
Yeah, it's like, can we just get through this week or this
Yeah,
day? Or, that those
right.
tend to be the conversations I'm having lately is, all right, well, let's just see where we're at next week, or let's say what's going on next week instead of
Yeah.
trying to plan things for your whole life. Or, it used to be this kind of thing
Yeah.
where you would look really far ahead. And I'm just noticing the conversations within my family that are happening is like, okay, well, we know this is what we're going to be doing for the next couple months potentially, but after that, who knows? And
Yeah.
it's a lot more of a surrendered way of living because you aren't coming up with your 5 year or 10-year plan, and
Yeah.
you can't depend on things that we used to be able to depend on.
Yeah. A lot less is dependable. And it's interesting because it's compressing our awareness of time, right? we're not going to be drifting off into the future because we're all learning quickly, right? That it's futile, as Jen
Mhm.
Allen just says. Planning feels futile. Yeah, exactly. And I think those of us who are just kind of better at sort of reading which way the wind blows, I felt like that for a long time. And,
Yeah.
I'm left mind, left view, all that kind of thing, strategic mind. But I could just tell that, like, back in the day when I was in, the corporate world, I found it so foolish how far out they wanted to plan. And I'm like, there's so many things that can happen between, and like, it's one thing to have a
Yeah.
rough plan if it's more utilized as a shoot, let's do some preliminary thinking just in case we go off the tracks. We've already got some thinking, some contingencies. Cool. I think that's great. I think that's still okay. But to be able to say this is the plan and I'm going to make it happen, or I can count on that to happen, is totally foolish.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're in the unprecedented times,
Yeah.
where things that you never thought could happen, and you couldn't begin to predict those things. So,
Yeah. I mean, I wonder, Teresa, I was I was thinking about this yesterday. I was hanging out with a good friend of mine and we were having like philosophical conversation all day about the changing times and geopolitics and everything. And it's like kind of like what I think you just said, like we are living in this reality where it's like, well, can we make it through another few days, So, and I kind of wondered, I was like, is this the feeling of like what it's going to be like in the new cycle with Gate 20? Is it going to give you this like, because 20 is part of integration and it's existential. Is it going to feel this feeling of like, yeah, almost like fear driving your attentiveness to the present and you're just totally absorbed in it, but there's sort of a background trepidation, you know?
mm,
Because one of the things about Gate 20 is it has a unique relationship. Like it isn't aware, but it's connected to the spleen, right? So there is some sort of fielding of the fear there.
I hope
Um,
that's not the case.
I, I, I know. I'm
Like
like,
that sounds terrible.
I'm like, if this is, if what I've been feeling over the past couple of months is any indication, then yeah.
I mean, I guess
Um,
it makes sense why people are wanting to educate themselves about their nervous system, and
yeah,
that because my relationship with my body is really the only thing that keeps me from launching into future projecting,
right.
and it's some like a mantra that I've been saying because we've had so much unknown, and just life has been weird as hell for the last couple months since we had our baby. But I've just been saying to myself, anything can change at any time. And that's how it's
Yeah.
been. It's like the mind keeps thinking, oh, it's going to be like this forever, or we're always going to be concerned with this, or engaging with this problem, or trying to find this solution. And anything can change at any time. And you also never
Hmm.
know where that change is going to come from. And um, yeah, it just feels, and I'm married to a cross the sleeping phoenix as well, by the way. So I
Mm.
feel like I get microdosed with what the collective frequency could potentially be, and it's a ride. But maybe that's helped prepare me a little bit for it.
Yeah. I mean, when you mentioned the nervous system, it's like knowledge of the nervous system is really just in since the 2000s, right? It's like the early 2000s, some pioneers like Peter Levine were starting to, come to some conclusions that have now really caught on. And like you can see, there's a really big tipping point where now everyone is talking about somatics, and it's just kind
Yeah.
of understood to be like it's a cornerstone thing. Like you can't ignore it, right? You can't
Yes.
overlook the nervous system. Um, but I think what I want to bring up that I think is cool about this is that both the nervous system awareness and human design both showed up on the scene right before all these big changes where we desperately need these two things.
Right.
And my hunch is that has always been the way in humanity. That, when Christianity entered the scene, it was critical. The world needed it. Buddhism, Hinduism, Judaism, all of these things, and the numerous other smaller mystical sects that never kind of caught on. But I think that, you know, we were on a fractal that I would say is lucky, to benefit from, you know, human design. And I think it showed up at the right place in the right time, as these
Hmm.
things do.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. I think it feels like all the awareness practices that I've been in a relationship with the last couple of years have prepared me for where I'm at now.
mm,
And and as I talk to other people too, kind of in similar positions, like, it just seems like a lot of people in my close circle are living moment to moment and that surrendered life.
yeah,
And that seems to be the consensus is just, wow, I don't know that I would have been able to handle this had I not had this awareness, or
yeah,
things could feel a lot more unmanageable or outside of my capacity if I didn't have this to depend on. And I can see how in the past people did lean on God or faith as their thing, and now it's other things that we lean on to get us through. But
mm,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's a good point. And I think, one thing that you had mentioned, Teresa, is, you know, um, there's going to be more of an orientation. Well, let me take a step back. I think actually what's going to happen in the sixth line era is the binary of disassociation or embodiment,
Yeah.
right? And it's already happening.
Yeah.
And technology allows disassociation, so I think unfortunately, if things continue to get um even more overwhelming and stressful as things break down, as everything feels more uncertain and potentially threatening, those are all conditions for people to want to disassociate. And unfortunately, we've got a million ways to do that. And so I think this is going to be a core challenge of nervous system regulation in this crazy 24-hour media news cycle that is inundating us with, all this shocking, tragic, challenging world events, right? But the other path is embodiment. And you had mentioned before we hopped on, Teresa, about it's more this new era, maybe for some people, more about descending deeper into the body instead of ascending, right?
Mhm.
And I love that. I actually participated in a spiritual community many years ago, just a little bit, kind of as an outsider, but it was called Waking Down. And it was very much about that premise of like, look, you got to start here. You can't just ascend, you got to really drop in first, right? The body is the platform for consciousness. And yeah, and I
Yeah.
think any smart spiritual communities worth their salt realized over the past decade or so that we have to contend with the nervous system in the body.
Yeah. It's almost like the temporal aspect of being a human is going to be
Mm,
at the top for for where we're going in that reality. And I know there's because it's a binary, there's that possibility for dissociation, or a fixation on ascension through that sixth line influence.
yeah.
Um, wanting to, I think of the sixth line as being on the roof, being up above and just
Yeah.
kind of being looking down at
They're looking
everything.
at the
And
horizon. Yeah, they're looking toward the
yeah,
future. Yeah.
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 And so there might be an obsession with that as well. And I know with technology, it's so much easier to dissociate, but I will say I saw that Meta, that virtual reality they had created, and everybody was like,
Mm,
oh, this is going to be the thing. You're going to
mm,
be poor and just living in this virtual reality.
yeah.
It failed and they've
Yeah,
like
I
pulled
read
out
that. Yeah.
all their money. And so I think that's an interesting sign of the times
Hmm.
that people are like, I don't want that actually.
Yeah.
And then there's this trend of going more analog,
Right.
like something I've been doing is playing vinyl records every day, and it feels so
Mm,
grounding. Even the quality of the music sounds different. It
yeah.
feels like I'm more in my present reality when I'm listening to a vinyl record, and just noticing people wanting to have more of a quote unquote analog reality. And to me, that kind of points to gate 20 as well, and just being actually in the present. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it's interesting just to
Hmm.
notice the trends and kind of see it lining up with where we're possibly going.
Yeah, I think there are people that are uncomfortable with the way things are going, and they're going to rebel, and they're going to go back to, they're going to want to reject social media and yeah, find ways to be more in person. It's again, it's going to be a binary. You
Mhm.
can already see the other side loud and clear that younger generations struggle to make eye contact, to connect deeply. without devices mediating the interaction and that kind of a thing. So, um,
And I also wonder if we just look at that objectively, like, is that a bad thing?
it's just the
if
thing.
you, it's just a thing, exactly, and it's
Yeah,
just where, like, I almost feel like it's given those people the ability to find connections and community within just very niche interests and to
yeah,
find a sense of belonging in places that maybe they weren't able to find in person. Just talking, like I have a younger niece and nephew, and just kind of talking to them and noticing trends within them. Um, yeah, it just seems like people who maybe felt outcasted previously or felt like they couldn't connect in person, that limitation is taken away. So there's kind of something out there for everyone.
yeah. I mean, everything's fine as long as you're not harming yourself or the other,
Right,
and
right.
if you're living with it, but there's I hear mixed things. I think some people are really designed for that,
Mhm.
more isolated, less relational. Some people, because of the cultural times, they yearn for that connection, but they don't know how to do it because of
Yeah,
the situation they've lived through. And so it's yeah, it could be either or.
yeah,
Um, Yeah, you had mentioned something else interesting, Teresa, how I mean, we can already kind of see the psychedelics becoming increasingly utilized. I mean, it's obviously already happening in the States. It's been legalized for therapeutic purposes in many states. I think it might even be recreational in certain states. I'm not sure.
yeah.
Maybe Colorado off the top of my head. I don't recall. Um, but yeah, that would make sense. With Gate 51 being implicated, right?
Yeah.
In the, yeah,
Yeah, I could see it. I mean, I think over the last, 5 or 10 years, it's already become a lot more mainstream. People who potentially wouldn't want anything to do with that are much more interested in that. It just seems a lot more, it's ketamine clinics popping up and people wanting to use mushrooms as a therapeutic thing. And I know that's always been happening and, like there's been various phases throughout the time. We had like the 60s and 70s where that was rampant, but it just seems like it's coming back and becoming even more mainstream. But I could also see it as a tool for dissociation, right?
yeah,
There can be too much of a good thing.
yeah,
It's a tool
yeah,
like anything else. It's a tool and it can be used to connect you. Like I've experimented with stuff like that and there's been times where it's really created a shift for me and I'm like, cool, I got what I needed from that and that was a fun experiment and I'm walking away with this lesson and I don't need to go back into that again. And then it can also be something where people are just using it to come out of their bodies and
yeah. And it can
to
be
dissociate.
re-traumatizing. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. I mean, what I like about, entheogens, right? Like psychedelics and things like that. And what I like about somatics, what I like about human design is that it's getting at the biological basis for our behavior, right? So we're no longer religion and then psychology, because of its influence from religion, really kept us up in our head in a
Hmm.
judgmental place and then thinking like, oh, we should make better choices. And if I don't make that choice, then I'm punished and condemned and I'm outed from the tribe or whatever. But now we're getting down to like, the true biological root of who we are. And it's like, from my perspective, when you understand the body is the platform for consciousness, when you understand that what people do is a byproduct of their biochemistry, their design, their life experience and conditioning, when we understand people are different and what we don't want to do, agree to do, or whatever, what they don't want to do or agree to do or whatever is impersonal. Well, when you really get all that, what can you be left with but acceptance and compassion, right? And
Right.
so I think bringing in the awareness of design and biology is humbling, is grounding. And I think that it is the basis for just at least tolerance, if not acceptance, And I think one marker that I see connected to this is there's been a rise of interest in like anti-heroes and villains in the zeitgeist over probably the past decade. Um, you could think about the Wicked movie, or was the Mufasa movie, or shows like Dexter or whatever. But like, Dexter's a little bit of its own different thing, but with like Wicked, for example, it's like there's an interest in how people become the way they are. Like we're rather than just condemning someone, the zeitgeist is now sophisticated enough to say, but what's your backstory? This didn't just emerge out of nowhere,
Yeah.
and that's a basis for compassion.
Yeah, totally. I see that trends even, I watch reality TV and I'll see people analyzing every which way of this person. And it's like you don't really know this person, but it is interesting to watch everybody look at their background and kind of analyze and be like, have compassion for somebody who potentially did something really bad, or really not bad, but just amoral or um, yeah, just some people are wanting to tear that person down. Some people are wanting to protect the person.
Mm,
It's, yeah,
yeah. Yeah. And I think, look, the powers that be, right, want to keep you in your head and traumatized and your nervous system dysregulated. That is in their best interest, right? And so, at whatever level of power, whether we're looking at political or spiritual or whatever, and this is what gurus would do unknowingly. Like they may very well have had a glimpse into something. I think they often did. Um, but that doesn't mean that it's integrated or they've stabilized in a higher place. And that's why, there's almost not a single spiritual teacher you can point to that doesn't also have a bunch of skeletons in their closet, whether abuse of women or, how they spent their money or, one thing or another, right? But it's
yeah.
like when we're actually doing the work we're doing here with human design and somatics, you can't be manipulated if you are truly grounded in yourself, you know?
Hmm.
And I actually mean that deeper than Ra's strategy authority level, which is foundational, but to really be so attuned that, if you've got a gate 57 activation, not a part of your inner authority, but it's still important information that you know how to tune into. And your cognition, we're really trying to help you get deeply literate about um, what your body is communicating, right? In all regards. And the more you can do that, the safer you are.
Yeah, it's your discernment really deepens and it's interesting because I feel like human design is just giving me a lot of context for things that I would experience before, but didn't know what I was experiencing or I didn't trust it. And now that I
Yeah.
have a way to name it and develop a relationship with it, it's a lot easier for me to trust because I know the mechanics of
Hmm.
what's happening.
Yeah.
And my mind needed that in order for me to really be able to make sense of what's happening. It's like,
Yeah.
when you get a splenic hit or just an intuitive hit and you can't explain it a lot of the times I wouldn't listen to those things. And now I've had
Yeah.
enough evidence to see, oh, I knew that. I
Yeah.
had that feeling. I'm feeling cognition too. I had a feeling and I feel like I got this information and then I completely disregarded that and did this thing anyways. And then
Yeah.
XYZ happened.
Hmm. It's helpful to know about it. It is because our internal experience is so it's complex. We embody different personas and roles in different situations, right? We've got, Teresa does parts work, protector parts, and different parts that step in to for whatever the situation calls for. So our internal experience is not simple and not linear. And for some of us, it's more complicated than others based on how you're defined, based on all kinds of factors, right? And so it is super helpful to have a map that's precise to be able to help you distinguish, oh, this thing that I'm feeling, that isn't intuition. That's emotion, or that's my feeling cognition. Oh, and then intuition is really about protecting me. It's tuned into the future moment and it's protecting me right now. But that's a sudden knowing that's acoustic in my mind. That's not a feeling. And just to make all these distinctions, yeah, again, I think this is the whole human design prophecy is, hey, people, you need to know this information if you're going to survive these new times with deep fake AI, onslaught of information that you can't even process,
Mhm.
the level of existential threat coming at you from all angles. You know, we got to know ourselves and we got to know how we operate and what we can trust, right?
Yeah, and I don't even know if it's all about survival in terms of like living or dying, but I even think about it in terms of still enjoying your existence
Sure.
because
Yeah.
if you're it's
Yeah.
like also our mental health because if you don't have that discernment within yourself or that way to actually know what your intuition is telling you, you could just believe all this crazy stuff or get really wrapped
Hmm.
into it when maybe it is happening, but it doesn't really concern
Yeah.
you and what you're able to do. And yeah, there's just so much coming at us. We have to be able to discern what is actually for us and where we
Hmm.
have power and where we don't. And it's, I think people's mental health could really go down the toilet if they don't have that sense
Yeah.
of grounding within themselves. I mean, I notice
Totally.
it with
Yeah.
myself. There's such a it's so easy to just get really wrapped into things, especially with my open head, you know.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
But to even
I mean,
know where
this,
our hooks are, you know, it's like I know that's a hook for me. So like I know when
yeah,
it's
you
grabbing
can
at
watch it.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, human design, was a front runner in realizing that we've got a trust crisis. We're trusting the wrong things, and the people in
Mm.
power are not trustworthy and not looking after our interests. So, if you weren't self-aware enough to kind of piece that together for yourself pre-2027, well, 2027 is going to, hand you that lesson in a really powerful way. And, I hope that more and more people are realizing, okay, I've got to let go of these advisors, of these people that I've been deferring to, of these people that I've been giving my hope to, um, outsourcing my whatever to, and that we all kind of withdraw and, take that back to ourselves.
Yeah, like how many cult guru documentaries have come out in the recent
How many
years?
more do you need to see, right?
I
I mean,
know.
it's like
And I watch all of them, but it's always the same story, you know, and it usually involves somebody exploiting people sexually and it's just like that same story over and over again of somebody exploiting you for power and you handing over your authority to this guru type person that's claiming that they know more than you and trying to manipulate you and
Yep. Yep. It's like movies about, rock stars. Like it's always about drug abuse.
Mhm,
It's
mhm.
like they always have a problem with drugs. It's the same freaking movie. Um, don't need
Yep.
to see it again. Yeah. Yeah, but I mean a world in which it is more fluid, it is more our relationship with spirit isn't mediated anymore, that it's just between us and source. Where there is more of a celebration of all the authenticity of creativity in the moment. That 59 gets up to the 20, right? You know,
Mhm.
I love the sound of it. To me, this sounds like a relief, from the very oppressive ideas we've had around these sacred subjects for so long.
Yeah. Yeah, I love this thought of there being no middleman between you and your spirituality or source or whatever and it being so personalized. I love the thought of seeing creativity as a spiritual practice, making things with your hands,
Mm,
seeing that as ritual. Um, One of my spiritual teachers has this saying where she goes, everything is sacred and everything is ceremony. And even to where like doing the dishes is an act of ritual, you know? And so I feel like this sounds really good. It sounds right up my
mm.
alley to go into this type of time. But there's always the binary. So
Well, you're right. I mean, there is always the binary, and you were sharing with me for the first time in decades, Gen Z men are leading a return to church,
hmm
right?
yeah,
So
there's been an uptick.
yeah, we know again, there's always going to be people that go the other way, and
Yeah, and
so there could be people clamping down on the old ways for safety.
do you think there's something interesting? I don't know, this could be a provoking conversation, but do you think
Okay.
there's something interesting about it being men in particular that are returning to these Orthodox religions?
Yeah, I mean, well, you just shared this with me moments before the call, so I haven't really thought about it. But I guess my first hit is that it's going to be a very certain. Well, let me take a step back before I answer the question, because the way that I'm answering the question from the awareness of having done this work for years, and 98, 99% of my clients are women. And prior to doing this work myself, right, teaching and coaching human design, I was on my own spiritual journey for 20 years, right? And having been in various communities, having done numerous trainings and studied various modalities, I was always one of two guys in the room. It was me and some other dude, and we usually became buddies, But it was me and if you think about analyst training, and Jen's in there, and Teresa, you can speak to this too. It's like it's one or two guys, you know.
Mm,
And so now the reasons for that are many, but one of the most compelling reasons I think why you find women in these awareness paths is you're in a different predicament, right? You had to figure things out because of, your status in society has rapidly shifted over the past several decades. So naturally that puts you in a place of like, okay, well, who do I get to be now? I don't have to become more masculine, do I? Or, how do you navigate all that? So there's that. But when you tell me that men are not, because religion to me, I guess this is a controversial thing. I would say religion is not deep work. It's rules.
mhm.
It's safety, right? So when I hear that men are doing that, I'm disappointed because I think now, granted, there are mystical sects of religions. That's true. That's valid. There are very like highly evolved, more sophisticated versions of whatever. But that's probably not what's happening here. This is
Mhm.
probably, we're going to go back to a more traditional way of thinking that they feel more empowered and safe by.
Yeah.
But it's not helping out. It's not what they need to do ultimately.
Yeah. Because a lot of these religions are patriarchal,
Yeah.
if not all. So
Yeah.
it's
God is a man, God is
mhm.
male.
Yeah, there's
Um
more like predictability. It gives them a sense of power, gives them a sense of control.
yeah.
I've also been noticing this kind of spiritual to far right Christian
Hmm.
pipeline, or it's like
Yeah.
spiritual to Orthodox religion. Like I just noticed people that, because I've been in the spiritual space for like 10 years now, and people that I've followed online that used to be more spiritual mystics, at some point there's something that shifted, and then they're Orthodox religion now, and
Hmm.
it really just makes me go, huh, I wonder what happened there. And it's like something scared them, and
It's a trauma
they,
response.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, I don't think categorically exploring religion is a trauma response. I'm not saying that, but I think reverting back to fundamentalist thinking that
hmm,
we've invalidated 6 ways to Sunday,
yeah,
you know, that's a trauma response. And it's a trauma response. They're looking for safety. They're looking
yeah,
for some normalcy, something familiar. And I can appreciate that human need, but um, that's going to be some people's path, what to do.
yeah. Because when you really start going down your own spiritual path or like engaging with mysticism, you see that there's no one answer to everything, and you see that
Yeah.
you really have to explore for yourself and experiment and know what you resonate with and what connects to your heart. And there can also be a lot of it almost just like opens this door to more unknowns.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even human design, the deeper you get, like, yeah, there's a lot of knowledge there, but the deeper you get makes you almost feel a little more out of control. And you have to be trusting and surrendering more and more. And I feel like people hit a tipping point with that. And like you said, it's a trauma response, and then they just kind of go whoop, like all the way back.
Yeah.
Um, so,
Yeah. Yeah. It's understandable. It's human. It's going to happen. It's not the path that I'm on.
mhm.
And I hope to find, I'm going to release a new podcast with one of our core members, Nil, soon. Just men who are willing to look deeply. It's a
Yeah.
really beautiful thing. I mean, as as such a person, I love my male friend connections where there is more interpersonal awareness and depth and vulnerability and willingness to share. And unfortunately, the fact of the matter is that is more rare with men in my experience. And that's why I've always had more female friends. That's why I relate with women very naturally and comfortably. But I think there's a part of us, I heard a lot of guys say this, that we yearn for that type of connection.
Mm. Yeah, and I
Oh.
think there that's I think that's a known thing that men yearn for that. And then
Yeah.
there's like these manosphere
Yeah. Weird.
manipulator people that come
Yeah.
in and co-opt that and take advantage of that, which actually makes me really sad. But
Yeah.
that's also another trend that we've been seeing. It's almost like men have felt a bit lost, and so they go towards these quote unquote hyper masculine people, which is just
Yeah.
this clown version of masculinity.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's just sad to see that. But I also feel like we might be, I mean, maybe that's becoming more known now. Like we're in this truth revealing time, so people are
Yeah.
seeing it for what it is. I hope it doesn't keep going further into that. But as
Yeah.
we keep going into more of this chaos or just unknown, I'll say I don't know if it's going to be complete chaos, but just unknown, people might be looking for that kind of thing more and more.
Yeah. And it has become clown world, which is
Yeah.
the beauty of that is you can recognize the Maya for what it is,
Yeah.
because it
Like it's
is
always been
so
Con World.
it's
But
always been
now,
it's always been clown world,
but now we can
but
really see it.
yeah, yeah. And you can just see like how kind of tragic and ridiculous most people's attempts to find self-worth and belonging and love are. And it's tragic, but they end up degrading themselves often inadvertently, not knowing how to get there. They're just, and so I mean, the bimbo movement popped up in my head. I mean, seriously, this is a thing, So it's
There's
like,
every type of movement
there's
imaginable.
there is every type of movement imaginable now. There's like basically another way to say it, there's every type of delusion
Mm.
imaginable now, what's the expression like if you can dream it, well, maybe it's if you can nightmare it, it can happen in this world, It's like
Do you think that's going to be more? I don't know. I mean, I know we're not trying to forecast too much, but do you think that'll be like that's just going to happen more and more as we go into this like 2034 reality?
I think in a way that to the extent that people are wrapped up in their mental desires and whatever, right? Then I think it's the mind makes people weird, right? Like you look at like a plastic surgery disaster. It's like that was mentally led, you know? And so it's like the mind takes us into it turns our life into a weird, unnatural thing, right? And so I think as long as there is still the economy and the technology to live out your fantasies, I think people are going to be doing that at
Yeah.
scale,
Yeah.
and it's kind of the thing is like if you're disassociated and you're totally living up here, then your whole life becomes an imagination of who you think you should be or what you think you want, and you know
Right.
all these kind of secondhand notions of the core human needs that we all actually have, you know. So I think there's more weirdness to come.
Just gonna keep getting weirder.
I have a feeling. Yeah. But look, I think the other side of that is weirdness is also beautiful.
Yeah.
I hate to see the tragic, mentally led expressions of weirdness, but I love people's genuine weirdness. And I think
Yeah.
this is a time to like celebrate that. And there's just I think that we underestimate the depth of people's private realities and how that's going to continue to deepen and enrich. And I think we're going to come to an era where it's hard for us to really imagine, but we're all islands that are so different from each other, you know? And then it's a matter of how do we find ways to visit each other's world, respecting it, finding the boundaries, you know, getting what we are looking for in that,
Mm.
intimate connection or being seen or whatever it is. But it's going to be a bit of a new dance around how do we live this fullness of our subjectivity while still finding ways to bridge into the other's world and relate?
Mm, yeah,
We keep coming back to this point. This seems to be a
I know.
central, it seems to be the central thread in my mind.
Yeah, all
Um,
through all of our different thematic exploration, it comes back to relate or not.
hmm To relate or not, and do we even know how anymore?
Yeah, yep.
Yeah. Jen said, I wonder if the pendulum has swung this far in order to come back to balance. Yeah. I don't know what you had in mind specifically, but I think in general, yeah, this is exactly. We've swung too far and things are crumbling and yeah.
Yeah.
I guess one other thing that just popped in my head when I was thinking about the rerouting of the mystical circuit through the channel of transformation, that's kind of cool because it's a continuity with the Phoenix notion.
Hmm.
I wonder if there's something to that. So again, finding the spirit where somehow are transformed through relationship and finding the spirit. And yeah, I mean, it's Phoenix vibes in that.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's something with ambition there too and drive.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Finding the spirit through our drive, through our ambition,
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
or through others' drive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Does anyone here have any questions or further comments? I just love these conversations as a right brain exercise.
Yeah.
Just because, I mean, very much like, this wasn't our plan when we did these, but I think what has organically happened is I feel like, not to say that I will never do a presentation in one of these remixes, but I kind of love that we're just stepping into the vibe of the future here and just leaning into the present moment, trusting the rightness, improvising, and seeing what's there. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
that's what it's about.
It's always a good
So,
exercise for me.
yeah, me too. It's especially tricky with me because I have a left mind.
Yeah.
you know, yeah. You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks
Yeah.
for coming.
Thank you for coming, everyone. All right. We'll let you know about the next one. Thank you so much for being here. We'll catch you next time.
Bye.